Welcome back. This is where we take a look at what's coming out in the week ahead. So this week we have, after the end of last week, I mean, sort of almost anything can happen, but the markets are so data dependent at the moment and reacting to everything. Whether it's data, whether it's comments from some of the central bankers, all of it is just playing such a big part. Everyone's nervous, but look at the stocks, they just keep going up and up still. It's almost as if everyone's ignoring what's really going on in world economies. But you're still seeing that divergence between what's happening in the US against pretty much the rest of the countries, I would say. But of course, that's just my personal opinion. So anyway, let's have a look at what's out this week. So we do have consumer credit. Uh, Again, look at consumer credit, because are more and more people putting, their costs, their expenses, their spending actually on their credit cards? Are they taking out more loans, or are they still just eating into the savings that they have? And then we've got economic optimism, if there is such a thing. I mean, in the US there probably is. In other parts of the world at the moment, probably not so much. And then we're looking at inflationary data. So again, it's going to be lively. We've got CPI, PPI, and then, again, we've got that Michigan consumer sentiment. Now, I'm talking about consumers and credit and all that. And, I do mention this from time to time. For me, consumer sentiment is so important. We account for the biggest part of an economy, 60 to 70%. So obviously we matter. If we're not spending, the economy is going to come down. If we do spend, or we spend more than perhaps we should or could, then that boosts the economy. So, and of course, if we're not spending, that's when the governments and the central banks try and replace us through their quantitative easing and other various forms of stuff that they do. But as I constantly say, they need to come up with a plan B, because at the moment they've only got one plan: QE, and then more QE. Okay, so looking at EU, in Europe, we've got investor confidence. So again, how are investors feeling? We've got ZEW. So, we're looking at more sort of around businesses and such like, and of course, industrial production. So we're looking more at that rather than public sentiment. And then in Germany, again, we've got CPI coming out. So looking at inflation there, if that's starting to come down yet. Along with ZEW for Germany. In the UK, Bailey's speaking this week, so just keep an eye out on that, especially if you're trading sort of pound against anything, for sure, or gilts or FTSE, so many different things. Then we've got retail sales, so are consumers still out there spending? Unemployment. And again, just keep an eye on this unemployment data coming out of the UK, because when it comes not so much to the unemployment numbers, but sort of, the wages and that sort of area, as I mentioned last week with NFP and such like, the wages coming out from the UK this week will probably help to decide how big the next Bank of England hike's going to be, whether it's going to be a quarter or 50 again. So, it's worth watching, and, you just got to think a little bit deeper into some of this data. GDP's coming out. Of course, it's going to be the end of the quarter one. And then industrial production. And as I say, industrial production seems to be a challenge for most countries at the moment. In China, we've got CPI, so looking at inflation there, and trade balance. And again, in Japan, we've got more inflationary data coming out with PPI, and then capacity utilization and industrial production. Now, capacity utilization growth is between 80 and 84%. When it's below that, then, that's starting contraction. If it's really sort of getting into the low 70s, then, that's sort of really giving you a strong indication of the potential for a recession. Moving on to New Zealand, they've got their rate decision coming out this week, as do Canada. So again, depends what you're trading and such like, but it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. So that's pretty much it for the week ahead. I mean, it's inflationary data coming out is again just going to start traders either adding to positions or cutting positions. But you've got to look at the macro outlook. Too many people, as far as I'm concerned, or traders, investors, they're just looking at interest rates, and there's so much more going on within these economies. And I'm going to cover that with the macro outlook. So I'm not going to bore you by going through them on every single one. Just the first and last, I think, is enough. But hopefully you've already seen the first part. And this is again just where we're trying to prepare you for the week ahead. But we've got so much more that we can offer and help you with. So feel free to reach out and just ask us, and we'll happily have a discussion with you to chat about trading, how we can help you, and just see how it goes from there.